Hi, my name is David Thomas. I'm the co-founder of Immersive Denver. If you're not familiar with Immersive Denver, go to the website, immersivedenver.com, sign up for the newsletter. But basically, we are an arts advocacy organization. We do community building, we advocate for immersive art, and we do educational events. This would be a perfect example of that. We're kind of doing all three things at once. What we're doing tonight is a part of our what we call Immersive Espresso series. We started it during COVID to just keep the ball rolling along, but now we're actually able to do them in person. This particular, our first in-person Immersive Espresso, is made possible by the folks at Non Plus Ultra, NPU. And this is their space, that's their bar, you're drinking their booze, so you should say thank you. And I'd like to bring Dave up from NPU. He flew in this morning from San Francisco, and he'll tell you a little bit about what they are, what they do, and maybe why you ought to care.
Thank you, David. Hi, everybody. Thank you for coming out today. Just really quickly, I love what you guys do, although I may not know what you do, but NPU is really a fan of the arts. So we are mostly on the real estate side of things. We have Sports Castle next door. We have this property. We have a couple others throughout town. We just reached into this market, had a successful business in San Francisco, and looked at Denver and saw all the exciting things that were happening here. Man, I'll tell you something. You guys really know how to do it right. I'll just put it out there that way. Your zest, your sense of wanting to go out and experience is something that I've noticed in the short time that I've been here, and I come and go, but it's always very exciting. So with that, what I'm going to tell you is that we have property for experiences to happen, as well as I'll tell you that our main bread and butter for our spaces are mostly corporate events. But if you're an artist out there, I always have a corporate client looking for something to be built. Painted, fabricated, whatever. So grab me. I'm going to be around for a little while. Drop me your card. Let me know what you do, because I'm here to help you. So thank you for coming today. Thank you.
Yeah, so thanks very much again to NPU. And by the way, our wonderful bartender, Max, feel free to tip her. You're not paying for the drinks, so you can at least pay for the lovely service. All right. One thing I did need to tell you, if you're not paying attention, you're not reading the newsletter, shame on you. But this November, Denver Immersive is partnering with NPU, Meow Wolf, Denver Center, the Denver Film Fest, the Denver Fringe Festival. I think that's most of them. Who? Oh, Denver Arts and Venues, your city government here, to throw the Denver Immersive Gathering. This is going to be a really cool event. The sponsorship is making it possible for us to do some really cool stuff. We're having big keynotes coming in that aren't announced yet, but those will be coming. Tickets are going to go on sale in June. It's not a big event. I think it'll sell out. Our goal is to have about 150 or so locals and about 100 people nationally. It's going to be a wonderful networking event. So there's some programming, but it's in a conference. It's not that sort of thing where you're going to spend lots of time in sessions. You're going to spend a lot of time talking to people, hanging out, having fun, checking things out, watching shows. So get on the list, make sure you keep in touch on the Denver Immersive Gathering. It's going to be really, I think, a really wonderful opportunity for Denver to showcase what's going on here to the rest of the country. And so like Dave said about NPU coming to Denver and realizing, hey, this place is really cool. We consider them to be one of those kind of early warning signs that the culture's figuring out what we've been doing here for a long time. So come help us share the good word on the dig. Okay, so before we get started on the whole meet the press, I got to say something about what is immersive. Because every once in a while, someone says, well, what is immersive down there? I say, oh, we promote immersive arts and entertainment. They're like, okay, what's immersive arts and entertainment? And then the professor of fun comes out and I give you the lecture. Don't worry, that's a different immersive espresso. We'll have that another time. Immersive in the simplest sense, and I like Charlie Miller's coinage. She says it's an audience-centric art. And so it's art that puts the audience at the center. Some people say it's art that can't exist without the audience. It's hard to think of a lot of theater as really existing without the audience. So sometimes people get a little confused. I'll tell you what I think it is on a more deep level. I think immersive art, unlike some of the more traditional arts, leaves space for the audience to make their own meaning. It's a little less preaching and a little more generative and mutually creative between the creators and the audience. And I think that's really exciting because I think that's what brings everybody here together, whether you're a visual artist, whether you're a performance artist, whether you do environmental installations, doesn't matter to me. What makes it immersive is that you're leaving space for your audience to come and make their own meaning. Because it breaks from the fine arts in that tradition, it's naturally experimental. Someone asked me, why does immersive have to always be so weird? I think they meant that as an insult, but I'm like going, it's weird because it's doing new stuff. So here's the question. How do you get new stuff covered? I'm glad you asked. That's why I'm going to introduce Amber from Starry Night Productions. She's one of you. She's an immersive producer and performer, and this was her idea. So if you don't like it, blame her. But Amber, come on, take it up. Talk to us about meeting the press.
Hi, everyone. It was technically Christine's idea, and then she talked me into doing this, so she's the mastermind behind this. I'm Amber Blais. I run Starry Night Productions. I also work with Alt Ethos. They're an experiential design company that does immersive work more in the corporate realm. And I've been doing production and producing for over 10 years, and also marketing and PR for over 15 years. Working specifically in the arts. So I'm very familiar with both sides of the production end of things and the marketing end of things. So I thought this would be a really great chance to get to meet some of our press and hear about what they're looking for in a press release and how amazing people like you guys can help get the word out about the things that you're producing. So with no further ado, let's introduce our panel. I got my bios right here. So Bree Davies. Come on down. She's the host of CityCast Denver, a daily podcast about the city. She was born and raised in Denver's art scene. She's been an arts and culture critic, a touring musician, and has produced all ages music and arts festivals in spaces from Rhinoceropolis to MCA Denver. So we're happy to have you. Hi. Thank you. And we have 2 microphones to share between the 4 of us, so we'll be passing them back and forth. Emily Ferguson, come on down. Emily is the culture editor at Westword. She has been covering and assigning stories on Denver's arts and music scene. She moved to Denver from DC in January of 2020 and has previously covered arts for the Wall Street Journal and podcasts for the London Spectator. So, ooh. And last but not least, we have Danielle from Proscenium. Danielle currently covers the Denver immersive art scene for Proscenium and previously wrote for Westword after she moved to Denver from Indiana in 2018. She is also the marketing and media manager for a haunted house and occasionally works as a scare actor at haunted attractions. Before moving to Denver, Danielle covered local music for an Indianapolis Alt Weekly and was the general manager for media and promotions company Do 317. Awesome. So we have some questions that we'll get to with the panel. The first, we kind of wanted to have an idea for what you guys are out here. So how many producers do we have out in the audience? Awesome. That's great. Do we have anyone who runs a venue or venues? Wonderful. Thank you. That one was obvious. What about visual artists? Nice. Do we have any musicians or? Oh, wonderful. Did I miss anything? Oh, performing artists. Yeah, that's a big one. Yeah, thank you. And oh, dancers as well. We have some dancers. Wonderful. So we have a good cross section of our artistic community here, which is really wonderful. So we're happy to have you. All right, you guys ready? Yeah. Enough of me talking, more of you talking. So our first question is, what is the actual state of the press in Colorado? Just kind of talking about how many outlets do we have? How many press releases are you guys seeing? And how many stories are you writing a week? That kind of thing.
Oh, we have to. Got them.
Yeah.
It's a song. What is this?
Song.
So over at Westword, we do probably 10 stories for music and then 10 stories for art per week. So basically I'm assigning stories like a month out. So it's good to get timely press releases a little earlier on, as soon as you know about the event, essentially, and getting those so I can assign those stories out like a month in advance. That helps the writer get a good feel of the story. Otherwise, I'm seeing probably, it depends on the week, but like 5 to 10 press releases a day, I'd say. All from between music and art, I'd say like 10 for each. So we get like a good amount through the inboxes, I'd say.
Yeah, I think that there's like a sweet spot with pitches is you don't want it too early, like 6 months in advance, we can't do anything with that, but like 6 to 8 weeks. It's a little different for us. So I host a daily news podcast. It's 5 days a week. It's a 15-minute show with one topic. So we're probably running 3 art stories a month, maybe. So we don't have quite as much of the coverage capacity that Westword does. But also, the time frame thing is just so tough. I think for print, it's one thing. So you're kind of having to balance like print and online and you know what I mean, and other avenues. But yeah, I think like for me, a month in advance is max. We don't really, we plan about 2 weeks ahead. So, and I just want to talk a little bit about the state of media kind of conversation. So I've been writing or working in media here in Denver for the last 15-ish years. And I think there's a narrative that there is a drought of news coverage, and there really isn't. It's just, you have to like realize that there's different streams connecting to different people. It's kind of like where you get your, it's like how many things you subscribe to, right? There's like a gazillion fucking things. But I tune into the things that I know are bringing me new stuff. But I mean, there's, you know, there's Miss Mayhem is a great online magazine here. Daria is also a great print magazine. Westword, honestly, all of us have written for Westword. Westword's pretty much the spot if you want to get something covered, especially that's on the weirder side. I feel like Westword's kind of the space for that. But even places like Denverite do arts coverage. Denver Post does arts coverage. So I don't think it's as dire as people think it is. It's just, there's also, I have to say, a lot more competing for people's attention. You have to realize, like, you know, I was doing events 10, 15 years ago. There was nothing on Brighton Boulevard. I mean, for the story a million fucking times, but like I couldn't get people to come to Brighton Boulevard to go to a show, and now there's 10 shows happening on Brighton Boulevard. So that's something else to just keep in mind is like Denver's awesome now, so a lot of people are doing cool stuff here. So you're really, I think you just have to think about that, competing for a lot. Like there's a bigger market out there now.
Yes, very segmented, disjointed. People, attention spans are split up across all these different mediums. So if you're shooting for Denver Post or Westword coverage and you don't get it, but you get a small-time blogger to write about you, great. You can use that in your next pitch when you pitch Westword again next month or whatever. The distinction that I wanted to make is that, I mean, all of media coverage outlets were short-staffed. However, some are funded and some are fully ran by volunteers, and that makes a difference. And so I'm representing No Proscenium, not just our writers, but like most of the people inside of that organization are volunteered. And so that factors into what I decide to cover. First of all, at No Proscenium, I'm not getting all the press releases. Those are all funneled to the editorial team. Most of you probably know Catherine and Noah. They screen all the press releases, and then if it's something they're interested in, if it's something that checks all the boxes for them, because they're very particular about what qualifies as immersive, but if it checks the box, then they pass it on to me. And then even then, it's not my job to cover that. here's this thing, are you interested in covering it? And I'm not gonna bite off more than I can chew. So I'm not gonna take an assignment and do a disservice to something if I don't have the time to do it. I'm also probably not gonna take it if I'm not interested in it, because I'm not gonna have anything positive to say. So I would rather just not cover it than to cover it negatively.
Kind of in that vein, like, if I'm not writing it, usually a freelancer is. So that goes along with that. They're not covering it unless they're interested. That's also kind of, I guess, where the press release comes into play, how interesting and engaging it is.
That's great. So kind of takeaways from that, what I'm hearing is you guys have limited time. You have a lot of press releases coming across your desks, and you have a lot of competing things. And so when we send press releases over to you, it has to be something that really grabs you. Which kind of leads into our next question. What grabs you? What are the, I would say, top 3 things that make a good press release? What should be included? You know, what length should we look at? That kind of thing.
Basic stuff, time, date, information at the top. Just put it out there. So a date, it's wild how many people send things that just don't have a date on them, or don't, or it's like we have to dig, because you know we're looking through a million things. So it's just like here. If your website's there, if you've got photos, it's honestly more likely you're probably going to get covered, because I haven't had to do any of that initial research to find out who you are and what you're doing. But then, yeah, just keep it short. What is exciting or interesting about what you're doing? What excites you about it? You can't just be like, it's a cool thing. Well, what about? I mean, that happens a lot. And so, like, really describing what it is. I think sometimes folks think that they're giving something away, right? And you want to give it away to me, because I want to be able to translate that information to share it with the public. So, you know, if there is something that you don't want people to know unless they experience it, at least be able to describe enough to us so we can get an idea for, like, oh, okay, this is what kind of thing this is.
Yeah, and like along with that, yeah, like she said, the date at the top, very important. And just like who, what, when, where, why. It's like just the basic 5 W's, you know, why should we be interested in it? It should be brief, short, engaging. I think one thing that is always a good attention grabber is a good piece of art at the top. And then highlighting one detail, at least one detail of the show that you think is going to be like either a big attention grabber or just, you know, something that will catch the reader of the press release's attention. Because we have, like I said earlier, we're having like 5 to 10 a day going across the desk, across my desk for each vertical. So especially when it comes to arts, I think it's really important to have a visual kind of at the top, have why you think it's important, who's going to be there, and yeah, like why does it matter in this state in Denver? Does it connect to like any other sort of issue or thing going on? I remember I think Lighthouse Immersive got my attention one time just because they were doing something specifically for Ukraine. Like that's like kind of a hook in that gives you, you know, okay, like this is something then that's the kind of thing that we would write up a lot sooner because it's on a more timely and pertinent issue. So if there is something like that within your show, that's important to put in for sure.
Yeah, so I don't really have too much to add. Amber asked us to name the top 3 things that need to be in the press release. And my top 3 things were, first is a visual, whether it's a photo or a video. Yeah, I need to know what the vibe is. I need to know what I'm getting into. And sometimes like a photo is just the best way to tell. The second thing is relevant and accurate description of the content. This is not the time to sell it and put a bunch of fluff in there. Just the who, what, when, where, why. Tell me what's happening, when it's happening, why I should care. And the third piece is what's different, special, unique, newsworthy. That's what we're talking about here. Find a way to make it newsworthy. It's the 2nd annual, it's the 5th annual. If you have a special actor, somebody on staff that has their name carries weight in the community, or if you can tie it into like a relevant a current event, that makes it newsworthy. And then the other thing I just wanted to make the distinction between the press release and the pitch. So two very different things. The press release is where you're going to put all the facts, the information that cannot be disputed. That's where we're going to go to like end our articles, put all the calls to action and that sort of thing. But before I see the press release, I'm going to see your pitch to me, the email where you're sending me the press release. That's where you sell it to me. That's where you make me care. That's where you customize it to my outlet.
Let's talk about that pitch. Because I think a lot of people don't really even know. They think they can just send out the press release and that's it. You guys are just gonna pick it up. So what makes a good pitch? What makes a bad pitch?
I'm reviewing my notes here, kind of what I already said, less fluff. So a good pitch is, sorry, that's where you have the fluff. That's where you're going to sell yourself, be confident, but don't like oversell it. Another thing that makes a pitch stand out is one that is in the format that I've requested it in. That's not me so much as like at No Proscenium. If you go to No Proscenium, there's a whole page detailing every type of submission and everything that they want you to do, how they want the photo oriented, all of that kind of stuff. So make sure that what you're sending people is in the format that they've requested it in. And the other thing is to do something that's different. So everybody's sending a digital pitch and press release, and that's fine. Definitely do that. But if I also get like some cool invitation and snail mail, that's going to stand out. That's going to make me think about that.
I wanted to add to that. I think another thing to add into a pitch is if the organization you're pitching to before, first of all, like getting the name of the organization is right. I've had a few emails to Denver right before.
There's no
Westword. Yeah, the Westword, yeah. And yeah, just getting that right, number one. And also, I mean, if the organization you're hitting up the pitch, if they've covered you before, send a link and be like, hey, you guys covered this last thing I did. This is even bigger and better than before. Like, you know, that's another good way to kind of catch the attention. Oh, we've covered this before. Like, so we know that it's going to be good essentially, or it could be bad.
Well, and doing that too also allows, you're doing a little bit of work for us and we appreciate it. Because again, we're looking at a gazillion things. It's like, oh, we can click back and say, oh, it's these guys that did this thing. You know, especially if you're known for doing things that are super different every time you produce an event. If we can look back and go, oh, okay, even if it's totally unlike what you're pitching us now, at least we have an idea of like, this is the kind of work this group puts into it. Like, I love their things because they always are surprising to me. I think something else is, again, it does feel like a lot of legwork, but I think Danielle was saying this, just making sure that you are pitching appropriately to the outlet that you're pitching to. Because I mean, we're a daily news podcast. I don't need all the stuff that they need. Honestly, I just need a nice email that's like, hey, this is so-and-so. Maybe we met before. Maybe you and I have a friend in common or something. Like, just let me know that. And that'll like maybe get my gears turned and be like, oh yeah, I met that person at the whatever. Just something as simple as that will get my attention a little bit. And like I said, it's different for every outlet. We're a little bit more loose. I'm in audio format. So if your thing has something that really translates well to audio, let me hear that, or let me know that, or give me some sort of advances and or say, hey, I'd love for you to come check out a preview of the show and you can record so that we can have a little bit to take with us, because that's going to make it even more enticing to me to cover something arts related through our, our format's just a little bit different. So
just to add to that, I know if we have a mutual connection or whatever, that's really just establishing your credibility. and your professionalism. So that I mentioned linking to previous media coverage, that's like, okay, these guys have done this at least once before. So, you know, like we're putting ourselves on the line a little bit by saying, hey, go see this, check this thing out. So that helps develop the relationship and establish credibility and professionalism. But then I also I was taught not to send attachments when you are contacting members of the media, because some people are suspicious about clicking on an attachment, but I think more frequently it'll get caught in a spam filter, or it's more likely to get caught in a spam filter. So I was always taught to, you know, upload your press release into Google Drive or something like that and send a link as opposed to an attachment. If you're doing that, well, whatever you're sending, make it PDF. Don't make it like an accessible Drive document or whatever. Make it a PDF and make it view only. And then test your links before you send them, because Google Drive has all these different permissions. If you've ever tried to click on a link that somebody said they shared something with you and you couldn't access it and you had to request access and wait half a day before you got there. So just open an incognito window and throw that link in there. And if you can access it, then so can whoever you send it to.
And just one more thing to add. Yeah, I think we've already said this pretty much, but if the email is like too long, like I think you can tell if your email's too long. You know, it's just cut it out. Yeah, I hope people can tell. Sometimes.
Paragraph or two is plenty.
Yeah, a paragraph is good. Yeah, that's where you can.
Okay, so we got, keep it short, respect their time, because they're not gonna read a giant story. Yes. Get your attachments, so get your media all prepared, have your videos and photos, high resolution photos for print especially, all ready to go. Have your hook, the things that really pull people in. Keep your press releases and everything in PDF or non-editable format. The bullet points. Okay, great. All right. Oh, yes, establish your credibility. That's very important. And if you're new, introduce yourself. Tell them why they should know who you are and what you're doing.
Yeah, like saying that, like, it's good to put like a past like Westword article or something like that. Like, that isn't to say that those stories are favored over someone who hasn't been written up before. That isn't to say that. It just is helpful, you know, and it helps get my attention, but that isn't to say that I'm going to be weighing those stories over others. That isn't the case. It's just how it's presented, essentially.
So kind of talking about what makes a story stand out. So if all of us have stories, we all think they're very interesting. We think that the events we're doing are very interesting. But you guys hear about events 10 times a day, you know, so what can people do with their stories that will make them stand out from everything else that you're getting? Or what should they not do? What should they avoid doing?
Don't get too bogged down in details. It's good to have a few like big parts of your event and like the highlights that are going to happen and what you really want people to get out of it and the message and things like that. But kind of like we said earlier, length is everything. And just presenting it in a good way that isn't too bogged down will be a lot easier for us to read and just, yeah, a lot more digestible.
I mean, for us, we're hyper local. So if you're putting on an event in a historic theater, it's the first time it's been open in a long time. You're working with an artist who came back from New York, who's been gone for 10 years. I don't know, like something that ties it to Denver specifically, or why you think that Denver has a role to play in this, in whatever your thing is. That's big for us. But again, it's very specific. Also, just if you're working with an organization, if there's something community driven about it, I'm super big on accessibility. So if it's a very accessible performance in some capacity, you have, you know, like, I don't know, this is really a difficult question, to be honest with you, because there's so many different things that will grab you. And We should have better answer. Sure.
Well, I mean, everything that's been said so far is really a regurgitation of spin it in a way that's newsy. Whether it's your location, it's the people that you have putting it on or producing it, or the people who are benefiting from this production. Like, find a way to spin it, to make it newsy, and that's what's going to make it interesting. And then that also kind of leads into understanding what each organization is interested in. They're interested in Denver-centric. I'm interested at No Proscenium in specifically immersive stuff, but then even just me as an individual, I like dark stuff. I like horror, haunted houses, scary things. So like, if you send that in, I'm gonna be more likely to pick it up than something that's based in Shakespeare, which it doesn't really do it for me. So it kind of gets it at just getting to know the personalities of the outlets, and then even deeper, the personalities of the individuals at the outlets that you're pitching to. Maybe that one writer at Westword is not who you're going to pitch to every time. Maybe you're only going to pitch to them on that one spooky show you do at every Halloween, and the rest of the time you've got, you know, another audience that's more relevant and appropriate. So one pitch does not fit all.
And I think it also can be like just doing a little bit of research when you're looking at who you're pitching to and say, oh, this person covers theater. This is who I'm going to reach out to. This person generally, you know, this is more for print and web publications, but just like see who's most recently covered it for 303 magazine. I mean, there's the thing with this industry is there's a gazillion freelancers. We come and go. It's hard sometimes to develop relationships. So I understand if you tried and lost track of how many people have covered theater over the years or whatever, but just seeing currently who's doing it is like, to me, the best way to do that without having a total grasp on who is covering what at this very moment, you know? The other thing I would say is just following up is great. Following up once or twice is fine. Just a nudge. You don't have to like send some crazy long email or something weirdly personal. Just say, hey, I shot you a press release. Our event's coming up in 2 weeks. Let me know if you need any additional information. And I'll go, oh shit, okay, thanks.
Yeah.
You know, don't be afraid to follow up.
Yeah.
Keep it nice.
Don't be afraid to follow up, but don't email the person like 5 times if they haven't responded. But yeah, I think, I mean, yeah, knowing who you're pitching to, like Westword obviously likes to do weirder stuff. So if you're doing anything weird, very open to it. But I also think immersive can be a bit of like, it's a very like saturated, I don't want to say overused, I guess overused word sometimes. How is the show immersive? It, like, because I've like seen some shows that are describing themselves as immersive, but I wouldn't necessarily call them that if it's just like a concert with some art, you know, like that's not really what immersive is. So don't use the word unless it really applies, I guess.
I thought of one more really important one, and like always include, probably end your pitch with what's in it for me, or what are you offering? So we're opening on this date, but we're doing a media preview on this date. I'd love to get you early access. Would you like to come in and do an interview with our leading characters? I can, you know, whatever, but like, honestly, just what's in it for the journalists, and journalists like free things. So like access, you know, basically, that can be a big attention grabber, especially if you have an exclusive.
Yeah, definitely. And that's also just helpful because it's helping arrange things already and it shows you're on top of it, essentially. So it's just helpful on our ends instead of us being like, okay, so when can we meet and who is in charge and when can, it's very helpful to already present that at the very beginning. It's very helpful.
Yeah, so doing research is obviously very important. And I know as producers or creatives out in the world, we don't have a lot of time to do that research. So be interested in who is writing about the arts and start reading about it. Include it in your daily news feed or whatever you need to do to really be updated on who's writing about the arts in our town. And then if you don't have a lot of time, pick your top 5 outlets that you really love and learn who's writing in those and learn what they like writing about. And I think that's a really good place to start. So when you're sending out your pitches, you can really tailor them to them and then maybe do like a scatter shot. Oh, here's like 10 other ones that maybe they might pick me up, maybe not, but at least, you know, if they're interested, you have another person to add to your list of people that you can definitely contact the next time around. So it doesn't have to be an overwhelming, scary task. I know you can all do this, I believe in you. Next question. How can organizations build relations with the press? How can they get to know who is writing, what resources are out there?
Well, this event is great for that. I think, yeah, just reading is helpful. You know, actually reading the paper or listening to the podcast that you're pitching to is very useful because it shows that you've done your research, like we were saying earlier. It's pretty important to do. And I think just some like basics of making it so people still want to keep you and keep talking with you and stuff is just like there's like, I guess, the courtesy of, you know, timely responses and you know, just respecting the time of the journalists who are going to be working on it. So getting the press release out with an ample amount of time for them to write about it. And not like a week before or like a few days before, which has happened, is really useful. It's just a bit more, it's easier for us to work with, essentially. And then I had already said this earlier, but you know, it's good to, if someone hasn't responded, you should totally bump that and like send another email. After the 3rd time, it just wouldn't do it again.
My advice is to start a spreadsheet tonight. And as you read articles and that person could cover my show, put their name, put their organization, put their name, try to get a contact information, an email address. If not, that's fine. Maybe you'll find their email address later. You may not be able to find individuals at your organizations and have to start with a generic info at whatever email address. That's fine. Start there. Once you get a name, add a new line to your spreadsheet. Keep the generic info at, because you always want to send your pitch, your press release to the generic inboxes. But as you get individuals' contact information, add them. And journalists do, freelancers, they go all over. Follow them. If you find somebody who likes your work, follow them. Stay in contact with them. Hey, I saw you moved to so-and-so. Can I get your new email address? Like, stay in contact with them. Develop those relationships. Because when you have something then to pitch them, it's just so much easier if you don't have to sell yourself, don't have to establish credibility. It's a long game, right? You're not gonna get all of your media list built out in a week or whatever. It's going to be a living, breathing document for years to come. The other option, if that sounds really tedious and you don't have that time, but you do have a little bit of extra cash, you can bypass that and go straight to a PR company. And I do it for the haunted house that I do marketing and media for. We make a $2,500 buy every year with our media outlet, and they can get me right into the inbox of all of the local news networks. And I almost always get at least a couple of times where we get invited into studios and do, you know, or have some scary characters come on during the news broadcast in the morning or whatever. I get a couple of those every year, and that alone is worth the $2,500 buy. So that's something to think about as well. And then also my last one is when you're at events like this, and when you come to the social networking event next week as well, as you meet people, just say, can I add you to my email newsletter list? And that way, when you get their card, then you just go home and put it on your spreadsheet. And maybe they're not media, but they're just supporters, appreciators, whatever, they talk to people. They're out in the community. They can help you do your PR. So ask them, can I put you on my list? They'll say yes, and then you'll have a secondary list. And I have one more, and then I'll quit. When you're pitching, I was also always taught to, you kind of segment. You've got your pie in the sky. Oh my God, I would love to be covered by these top 5 or 10 media outlets. Well, don't pitch to them first because you're gonna have to perfect it. So have your other list of your, it'd be nice and all these ones where you have like an info at, pitch to them first and maybe see what type of questions you get back. Maybe you forgot to include something very fundamental in your press release. So by the time you get around to sending your pitch out to your pie in the sky media outlets, you've got a really perfected pitch and press release.
I don't really have much else to add other than just be nice to us.
Yeah.
Sometimes press and PR are confusing for people, like we are not your PR person, but we are press and our job is essentially to get folks interested in what's happening in the city, for instance. But another thing is social media. I'm really active on social media. I met my Twitter friend Masha over there earlier. So if we're Twitter friends, go say hi. But you can reach out to me there. I'm pretty open and vocal about what I'm talking about, where I'm going, things I'm doing. I'm always looking for stuff to do just as a person. And that's the other thing I think that's important is like, I might get a press release for something that we don't end up covering because we have such a limited amount of coverage, but I might just go on the weekend with my husband to go check out whatever you're doing, because in the future, I can say, oh yeah, I saw these guys, they did this amazing thing, or let me send you, a lot of times, if you send me a pitch and it's amazing, but we just don't have the capacity for it, I'll connect you to another writer or reporter that I think might be really interested in what you're doing. So I think it's just like genuine courteousness and friendliness in the space. We're not going to run into each other a lot if we're in the art world. Just be cool, and I'll remember that, and I'll connect you with other people because I know a ton. I mean, we know a ton of other people that are doing arts coverage and things across the city as well. So just kind of like regular goodwill.
And for like people who are new, for sure, like one way, like, I mean, I think just developing that, it's like you haven't met me before or something like that, you just be like, hey, so, Westword hasn't covered us before, but I think this event would be good for Westword because you've like covered this and this, use some examples, and and then you can always end it with, if this isn't a good fit for you, could you link me with someone who it is, like you were saying. That's just like those extra kind of questions or like statements in there that really make it a bit more noticeable and shows that you're putting forth that little just extra effort. And that's really helpful and definitely catches the attention. I'm not on social media, so.
You're smart. So another great resource is that Immersive Denver has launched, Christine has launched the press page, or is about to launch a page with a listing of press and ways to reach out to them. So check that out. It's not live, but it's coming soon. And now she has to do it. Yes. So as you guys go home and start your press release, you have 3 people right here that you can chat with in a little bit and get to know and add to your little spreadsheet. It's a great start. So we're going to move on to the next segment of this thing, which is I asked each of them to create a question to ask their fellow panelists because I feel like they will come up with things that I never could. So I'd love to pass it off to you with your question.
So I guess I'm just wondering if you guys have a blind spot. Like for me, I'm not a theater person. So I just like, it goes, I just don't, I rely on my colleagues to grab the theater stuff. And we actually on my team have really devoted theater coverage, but I just wonder if there's something that you guys have trouble grasping or paying attention to, or.
That is my exact same blind spot, actually.
So
Yeah, I feel like we've gone a bit more into covering, I mean, all the immersive stuff as like Denver's finally open. And that's been a huge thing coming through. And so that's kind of been our focus for lately. And more sort of underground or like murals or street art and things like that, as well as, you know, the more traditional art shows. But yeah, I definitely theater is my blind spot right now, so.
And that's just like, we're regular people that needs to work on things too. But I think also like in your pitch, I've gotten some really interesting theater pitches. I actually work at this group, God, what were they called? Pandemic Theater Company? Pandemic Collective. They sent me the best pitches and I was like, I am way into this and I'd never been into theater stuff before, but it was just the way that they presented their stuff. And I was like, holy shit, this is cool. So
I have a question for you.
Yeah.
Which, like, if you think it's cool and like something you're interested in, like what, do you feel that you don't have the qualifications to speak on it as
Yeah.
a critic?
for sure.
Yeah.
I mean, I think with Pandemic in particular, they were just pitching ideas that were relevant to me as a person. Like they did one on 90s rave culture and I was like, I was there. So I want to be immersed in that again. But again, also I think something is like, so I use social media in a little bit different way, but even if I don't do a show on what you're doing, I might go down and check out what you're doing and be like, oh man, everybody go check this out. And people listen. So I think that it's the building relationships aspect of it. But I mean, I think the blind spot question is more just like, how can people pitch to us that catch us more if it's something that we're not generally really attuned to? Because yeah, for me, theater is like, I just don't know a ton about it.
Yeah, I said mine earlier, it's definitely Shakespeare. But like on the opposite end, like if it's horror, I'm your girl, like every time. I hope you guys are writing this down.
Yeah, Westword has a bit more, like, usually a younger audience, I feel like, so not that many young people in Denver are that interested in theater. That's also been like one of the things, if it's like, yeah, like a weird, wacky, new sort of production that you're doing, and like, I think, who just did the production on King Richard and they like totally turned it around and it was really, really awesome. Yes, Funport, yes, Funport. See, that got my attention. It was really awesome. That's, yeah, kind of like what you said with the pandemic, people, it's just something like different. If it's a more traditional sort of thing and you're like pitching the Westward, what makes it less traditional than what you would expect, essentially. And Bree, I want to know, since you like grew up here, what changes have you seen in the art scene in music?
I mean, we just have more people here now that are interested in what we're doing, to be honest with you. Like I said, you know, I was doing events and stuff 10, 15 years ago, and it was really hard to get enough people in the door. And I think that that's the really incredible part is there's a lot of people here that want to go do cool things, and they might want to do 2 or 3 things in one night. And that wasn't the case before. So I think as much as it can feel competitive that there's more people doing more events, there's also more people that come and see your stuff. And that part's really exciting to me. Like, I mean, I'll be honest with you, Meow grew out of something that was very happening here, and it was all connected through many different spaces throughout the country. And I remember going to the Meow in Santa Fe when it first opened. My husband played a show there, and I was like, man, I hope Denver like gets their shit together and supports this, not knowing like, oh, wait a minute, this giant thing is in the works. But honestly, if you told me 10 years ago, Denver, the city of Denver would support something like Meow, I would have been like, are you fucking crazy? Because we were doing, you know, my friends were doing that at Right Now Swaropolis. People were doing that 30, 40 years ago in like, you know, before Loda was Loda, there was like a way weirder scene happening there. And so it's grown in a cool way. And now also there's way more jobs in this world. So.
And I was wondering, Danielle, since you moved here in 2018, right, from Indianapolis, and you were covering art there, was there like a shift in your interests or like coverage or how you covered the arts, or did it pretty much like go see?
So I actually, when I was doing most of my writing and arts coverage in Indianapolis, I was focused on the local music scene. So I used to go to a lot of concerts and I would write about nationally touring bands, but what I really cared about was the local bands and doing profiles with them and sitting in a room with them for an hour and a half and just shooting the shit and talking and then writing up this profile about how cool they are and their music. So that's the type of coverage that I did back in Indiana. And then I feel like I started to age out of live music and I just like couldn't stay up as late and go out as often. That's when I started to develop more of an interest in, I didn't even know it was called, I didn't even know it had a name, but I started getting into weird theater type things. There was a group in Indiana, one of my favorite memories, they did an immersive production of 1984 and it blew my mind. And they were just like the weird group that did that weird immersive Christmas thing every year. And I didn't even have a name for it. And so then when I got here, I was like, I made the connection that there were things happening here that were just like that. And I was interested and wanted to, I don't know, it's actually kind of a natural lead into my question for both of you, which is, and I hit on this a couple times tonight, but like there's a bias in what I decide to cover, what I pick up as a volunteer writer for a volunteer organization whose goal is to lift up the entire community. As I said, I don't want to write about stuff that I know I'm not going to like. And so therefore, the stuff that I choose to write about is influenced heavily by my bias, my interest in horror and whatever else. So how do you deal with that? Like, I think there's bias inherent in your work. It is what it is. Me personally, I try to be straightforward about it. I try to be very transparent about what I'm into and what I'm not. But that was my question for both of you, is just how do you deal with bias in deciding what to cover or how to cover it?
I think like there isn't a lot that I dislike, honestly. I can usually find something I like about pretty much anything. When big organizations can like take a dead artist and display their works on the wall and play it along to music, like that's something I'm not really a huge fan of. But I use that and I did something on like the new Frida Kahlo exhibit, and I wrote about what was cool about it, but I also kind of put in there like, oh, you know, this isn't like your typical show where you're going to learn about the artist. You know, like you can put criticism in, I think, but in like not a jerk way, I guess. And I think that's like good to have. I think it just takes a certain writer to do it, and some are a bit worse than others when it comes to that, I guess. But yeah, I think there's a way to work around it, but there's really nothing that I like refuse to write about, essentially. Like everything's up for grabs.
I just I run it by my team, my colleagues, and if it's like, do I want to cover this because I cover everything that these people do, or is this interesting to anybody else? Or I'll be like, bring pitches to me because I want to hear what you're seeing in the art scene because I am the art person on my team. So I want to hear from someone who's not an art person, what grabbed their attention from the slew of press releases that we get. Because sometimes I can hyper focus on the people and things I know. But I will be fair and say I've lived here my whole life. I know a lot of fucking people. And in a good way. I know amazing people doing amazing shit. And I want to talk about all the amazing shit you're doing. So I think I'm the opposite of you though. Horror cannot do it. But Peyton and Alexandra on my team are all about it. So there is someone for everything. So it's just like, don't be afraid to pitch whatever that is.
All right, speaking of pitches, we had you guys submit pitches, so thank you to everyone who did. And each of our wonderful panelists chose one of the pitches that stood out to them in various ways. So we're just gonna go down. We can start with Bree to talk about why you chose this pitch and maybe have that person kind of.
Jeff Altman, where are you? Hi, Jeff. So Jeff, you pitched the Museum of AI, a cross between Disneyland and immersive theater about how humans and AI interact. Groups of people enjoy an actor-led experience and learn about artificial intelligence. Jeff, I wanted to know what you mean by Disneyland, because I think that that's such a broad, you know what I mean? What am I gonna get in your Disneyland? Oh, sorry, come up. You always think you can yell and then someone really just can't hear you. Okay. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah, they're recording this, Jeff.
Sorry.
Please come up here, Jeff.
Hi, and thank you for selecting. I
Yeah,
appreciate that.
I'm curious.
So, we looked at the Disneyland experience where you have these actors running around and people are just like totally like jazzed about, I can't believe this.
I know.
Closer to my mouth. I am not a public speaker. Here, I'll do this.
Most people aren't, that's fine.
So you always have this thing where there's kids running around and they're, oh my God, this is amazing. I'm seeing Snow White, Mickey Mouse, and all that kind of stuff like that. And really, it's about there's an actor-led experience. There's another person there in character who's absolutely on top of the situation and keeping track of the story and guiding people through the experience. And so that's the important part of it, as opposed to I'm walking around an actor and who may or may not interact. So when we've done previous Museum of AI experiences, there's an actor, they are talking to the audience, and the audience is also in character. So they have an opportunity to put themselves in the role and react. So that's where the Disney.
Okay, that's helpful. Thank you. Now I have a better understanding.
Sure. Any other questions? No?
Any other questions for Jeff? Yes?
Sure. Yes. When they first arrived to the Museum of AI lobby, and we have a kind of a museum lobby with artifacts that show the history and future of artificial intelligence. We make all these artifacts kind of tongue in cheek, but they're real, but they're not real. And what happens is we have a person come out and say, you're here, your role is the following. And then they take them away from the lobby and bring them to the magic circle. And now they're in the role. So they're production assistants, or they are helping decide from the HR department, should we hire somebody, or should we do this, or should we do that? And so they're reminded more than once what their role is inside of here, as opposed to being a pure civilian off the street who came in.
Cool. We have networking afterward. If you have more questions for Jeff, you can find him and talk more about it. Yes.
Bree, you selected that pitch because you're specifically interested in the choice of that term, right? And so, because we were discussing it beforehand, and it's like the Disneyland meets whatever can mean 1,000 different things for 1,000 different people. And so, while that was a great vivid description that certainly put us in the right spot, you might be even better served by talking about the interactivity of the actors engaging with the audience in the way that you saw them doing that at Disney World. I don't know, just
So staying away from those more generic terms that can be widely interpreted, that sets you apart. So Disneyland, anyone can use that in their pitch, right? So you have to get to the meat of it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like that description of it, like worked perfectly, like that is really good, you know. There isn't a name on it, but it's Humongous Heads. And it sounds
It's
great.
Booba and Megan.
It's a parade pop-up performance of giant head 3D printed masked characters in public spaces in Denver. Their purpose? Petite performances disrupting the norm. Overthinking is overrated. Yes, it is. I wish I could accept that concept. But So thanks, like, I think like this is a good little short description. I mean, if this were like an actual pitch and like a press release, so, you know, need to have the days. But I think the main things I want to know off of this is mainly how many masked characters are there? What, like, are they like animals? Are they people? Like, are they talking? Are they dancing? How are they disrupting the space? Hopefully not touching people. Like, you know, just like a little more description there and what public spaces in Denver, you know, being like just a little more detail there. I mean, you have to write it on this tiny piece of paper. So I mean, it works like for like this short, you know, but like I think that, you know, as like in the email pitch, you know, before like the press release, this is good, I think.
What made that stand out to you, Emily?
Humongous heads. Yeah. Yeah.
All right. This is from Christina. Yes. Immersive show, Information for Foreigners, just opened at Colorado Free University. Produced by Wheatridge Theater Company, Pre-Latin America play is a harsh critique of life in a police state, including torture, prison, and surveillance, and could not be more relevant today. And the reason I selected this one is because it hit on one of the three things that I mentioned earlier, which is about spinning it to make it relevant or newsworthy or tie it into current events. And that spoke to me as being very relevant and current and timely. The only advice or improvement that I would have for this, just because of the sensitive nature of the content of the show, and because it's you know, Latin America and even in the title, information for foreigners, being explicit about who this show is for. I'm assuming probably everyone, but you know, when you might be potentially alienating people by the title or the content. It's always good to say, just because this is about this thing, doesn't mean everyone can't be there or whatever.
That's great. And that one stood out to you because of its relevancy, or what?
Yeah, it was specifically for me, what really pulled me in was, well, this is, yeah, relevant to current events.
Perfect. Well, thank you to everyone who took the time to pitch. You guys all had some great pitches, and these three just stood out for various reasons, but that's the way it goes with press too. So it was perfect. So we have about 20-ish minutes for questions. If you guys want to ask them, I guess for the three, you want to come up and ask it into the microphone and look into the camera. So does anyone have questions for our wonderful panel?
I don't know how to use these things.
You're doing great.
All right. Hi, I'm Imelda, and I wanted to know, it sounds from what you're saying that the pitch and the press release are two different things, and they go to two different audiences. Correct me if I'm wrong about that. The pitch is for a specific person, and the press release is for the info ad. Do you send them at the same time, even though you send them to different people? Hi, it's nice to meet you. I'm Imelda. I have a pitch. We met at this person, and here is why it is relevant. Also, I'm sending a press release. Or do I wait? Am I asking permission to send a press release later? When in doubt, send it. Thank you.
Yeah, so send it, like, the pitch is basically just like your intro email. Yay, like what you just said.
Just FYI, I sent you sorry about that.
Yeah, and it can be all in one thing. I mean, it's helpful if it's all in one thing, because again, everybody's email on inbox looks like a hellscape, or maybe that's just mine, I don't know, but yeah, if you just put it all together, but the pitch itself is just like, hey, I'm this, and I run this theater company, and we've got this cool thing coming up, I think you'll like it because da-da-da. Then the press release is like bang, 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 what when we're like.
You should be able to write your press release, and I would also say one step better than a press release is a whole media kit, a Google Drive folder with the press release, with a video, with 5 or 6 images, and whatever else. But that can all be created and that can be sent to everyone. It's the email where you're delivering that to them is where you want to be personalized.
Okay, so it's different from a query letter, in the writing role, and if you're sending the thing.
Yeah.
At the same time.
Yes,
Okay.
you're not asking for permission to deliver the press materials.
Good question.
Yeah, you're sending over your entire packet. So it's different from a query letter. That's what she said. I don't know if everyone out there can hear.
Yeah, no, that's a good, that's a
Wonderful question. Anyone else have a question?
So something that we talk a lot about in the producer world is accessibility. So we talk about the accessibility of people being able to come see the thing, if we're doing alternative performances, all those types of things. Is that relevant to you? Does that change the advantageous of it when you do press releases?
I think that's absolutely relevant, and I think it speaks to credibility and professionalism in that you've gone so far as to think about that. So yes, definitely include that information. It will only help you.
Ditto that, and I think it speaks to also, we like the accessibility. We like that. So noting that is a good thing and it gets more attention. It's one of those like details that draws attention.
Yeah, definitely. So like when I go to my team and I say, hey, I'm pitching this thing, this show's coming through, whatever, it has this accessibility component. That's really exciting to me as a person that works within the disability community, and is like, oh, because honestly, this is something that I feel like isn't talked about a ton, but like show up for a show with my friend who uses a wheelchair and it's upstairs and I had no idea because it's nowhere in the press release. Like that's like a huge bummer and it's fucked up. But like it sucks that it's a selling point at this point, but it really is, because that to me sets your show apart. If everybody can come and see it, if you can outline that for me, that makes it so much easier, and it gives me a talking point. If I'm going to do this show with you, I might ask you about it for sure.
Come on up.
Hi, I'm Caitlin. I had a question about specifically the immersive qualities of the shows, because I think, Emily, you said that you've been to a show where they say it's immersive and it's like art on the wall and then it's like the concert, so you felt like it wasn't really like immersing you. What are some things that you feel are the mark of like an immersive performance?
Essentially, how many senses does it activate? That's kind of like the point of immersive. I think a great example is mnemonics, like they use sound and the sculptures together and along with video. So like those are at least three different things that you're, not three different senses, but like three different things that you're engaging with. So I think it should be at least more than two, you know.
Yeah, or if there's some piece or component that the audience is going to play in that experience, to me makes it immersive. Like, I know what you're saying, like you project Van Gogh on the wall, what do you do? But like,
Take a selfie with it.
but like I'm thinking about my friend that co-curates Understudy, and I know 90% of the time when I go in there, I'm going to be immersed in something. There's going to be sound, light, visuals, touch, sense, smell, you know, like, so yeah, just it doesn't have to be that complicated. I think it's just, if anything, because I think the other thing too is like, if you're doing a low budget production, that can be a component of it that's just as awesome as somebody that's got a huge budget. I mean, I'm thinking about the stuff that Warm Cookies of the Revolution did early on and stuff like that. So, but yeah, just connecting with the senses beyond just listening or just watching.
I mean, David touched on it a little bit at the beginning of the evening, how like everybody has their own definition of what immersive is, and it is hotly debated, except at no proscenium, because they have defined very clearly and explicitly what counts as immersive. We only cover work on those fields that incorporate techniques which include audience agency. That's the big one for them. And that audience agency can be physical, narrative, emotional, whatever. promenade, site adaptive, responsive, specific staging, themed physical design, and user-centered design. And then they go on to say that if a performance would be right at home on a traditional proscenium stage or in a black box theater, it isn't really in our wheelhouse. So yeah, check out the specifics on No Proscenium's website. They list off all the different escape rooms, haunted houses, magic, blah, 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 all the different things. And when you're pitching to No Pro, just demonstrate that you've looked at that list and why you believe your work qualifies and meets the criteria, and then you'll be good. That's not my rules.
Or figure out if you're not fitting all those criteria, why they should still write about it. Yeah. Why is it interesting? Because there might be something else that's really exciting and then they'll step outside of their wheelhouse and check it out. So don't feel like you have to just like conform, because we're not conformists. Yes, Parker. Everyone, Parker has had a long work day creating his show, which is opening in June. So we're so glad he's here right now.
And Amber is amazing and helping us out as well. And there's Zach in the back, who's also on the team. But anyway, I'm Parker, and I have a question about, and Danielle, you mentioned this briefly, coming at this from like the most optimistic perspectives, but like abundance versus exclusivity in terms of press and articles and things like that. I think there's a tendency to like throw everything at the wall and see what sticks, but is there a situation where that potentially gets you in trouble, or there's like a conflict of interest or anything like that?
Follow up, just to make sure I understand. Are you talking about, could an abundance of media coverage be not a good thing?
Point taken. Well, kind of. I mean, I think it's like, I don't know, I've been struck by, it's fascinating to me that art is so variable. The genres, the mediums in which we create and think and operate and present are so variable, as are all three of y'all's individual interests and the niches in which you cover and look at. So to create something, like, is there ever a world in which, you know, what your podcast would present versus what Westword would present would be in conflict with one another, or in a way in which, like, an exclusive, you know, that you're then limited to maybe one news outlet is more beneficial than as much as possible? Is that clear?
I think so. And is it coming from the exclusive angle, like offering someone an exclusive? Yeah, I mean, offering an exclusive is always good because journalists want, media outlets want the exclusive, but typically how that's gonna work is they're gonna have an exclusive up to a certain date. And then, you know, you're still gonna be doing other press with other outlets, and you can say, well, I've got this situation going on with Westword, and they're gonna launch this, they're gonna announce on this date. So you can cover 3 days after that is when you can publish or something like that, I think.
Yeah, that's pretty much, yeah, I think, honestly,
Clear
we
with the
don't,
journalists you're talking to.
yeah,
Just so they're not like, oh shit, we're supposed to run that.
yeah, exactly.
We don't
Yeah.
we don't do breaking news of any kind, so it wouldn't matter to us. We often work with Westword, like, hey, you guys have already talked to this person, can we talk to them? But yeah, I think it's just being clear, like, hey, No Proscenium has the exclusive on this, so I would love to talk to you, and I really want you all to cover this, but just so you know, it can't run until after May 17th or something. It's clarity. That's the biggest thing.
Or, correct me if I'm wrong, another option could be give them an exclusive interview with your director, and then someone else could have an exclusive chat with some of your cast. It's like, how can you set them apart and make it exciting for everyone who's involved? I would say too much press is never a bad thing.
Yeah, and an exclusive could be first access, so a media night, you know, to get them in the door, because that's exclusive in the sense that nobody else in the city is going to see it except for the people that get invited to that event. So definitely throw that word around, just understand what you're trying to achieve and be clear about it.
Those press only nights and stuff are just a really great way for us to get to meet you, to be honest with you. Because if we come on your opening night, A, we don't get to be there in advance, so we can't tell people in advance. And B, you're gonna be busy doing a million fucking things. So if you do it on a media press, you know, like a soft opening or whatever, it's like honestly the best for us to get to know who you are. Come on up.
Hey, thank you. My name is Hunter. I'm looking for a little bit of clarification. You were talking about including a picture along with press release, and you were saying that sometimes that can be the most clear way to sort of define what is interesting about whatever performance you're putting on. Can you give me a little bit more information on what things are eye-catching, what things are going to stand out from other press releases?
I think what will make you stand out is, I mean, if this were, say, an art show of like paintings, pick like your favorite or most standout paintings in there and put those at like the top of the press release, you know, like embedded onto the press release. Like, so not like just as a separate attachment. Sorry, I should have been more clear about that. Like on the press release, include photos in it, and it helps illustrate. People I think are always good to have.
Yeah, I was gonna say,
especially
photos of
noticeable.
people are honestly the best.
Those are always eye-catching, I think, rather than static. I mean, if it is, you know, an art show and like you don't have photos of people looking at it really already because it hasn't happened yet, that's fine. But just find like what you find to be the most engaging standout images from the show that, you know, make it stand out from others. And usually that will speak to who's reading it, but people are definitely the most eye-catching.
And I know photography is expensive, but if you can maybe work with an up-and-coming photographer, someone to come and take pictures of your show in advance, like someone who's kind of at the same level as you, that you can work together with. Having photos press ready is really helpful for print too, because you don't have to track down your photo. So if it's already in there, it makes the story a lot easier to write.
1000%, yeah. Yeah, having the press photos ready is so helpful. Yeah, that just, whatever you are most proud of the most, well, actually, I take that back. Whatever's the most visually striking element of whatever thing you're doing. If it's this incredible big build out, this indoor tree and the whole production takes place around that tree, like get a couple of actors to stage and take a picture of that. If it's, you know, whatever, some site specific thing and everybody has to go down these creepy stairs into the basement, like get a picture of people heading down the stairs into the creepy basement. Yeah, people for sure, even if they're not doing anything, is going to make it look more real than just like scenery. But yeah, just whatever is going to, like I said, I need a vibe. I want to get the vibe. And so just a picture to capture that, or video. Yeah, if you're ever concerned about like what, yeah, like if you're questioning yourself of like, this won't be engaging to the person who's reading it, ask 5 of your friends, like, you know, like, or random people.
Just about someone who's not in your art world.
Yeah, like go to a bar and like, yeah, be like, does this look cool? Yeah.
Also, this is like a really simple thing, but like crazy fonts and crazy typography and all caps and stuff in your press releases does not get our attention. There's a well-known promoter in Denver music world who used to send his emails in all caps, and I was like, bro, I can't fucking read this. So it's like seems really simple, but just like clear, concise, really nice photo. Again, it's not anything personal. It's like we are looking at a gazillion press releases.
And keep text off the photos. If we want text on the photo, we'll put it there ourselves. That's another thing that NoPro is very, very specific about, is wanting horizontal photos, high res, no text.
And you can put a photo credit in, you know what I mean, like
You
Westword
should,
will
you
say
should always
photo.
include photo credits,
Absolutely,
actually.
yeah, and but just include it, don't watermark it or whatever.
Yeah, and coming from a straight marketing perspective, investing money in getting good photos is like your #1 way to translate what you're doing. So I would always suggest that for press, but also just in the wider world. Christine has a question.
From the internet, so we just had someone ask.
Put it next to your mouth.
No, it's like the speaker. So we had a person online ask if it's just vertical photos or horizontal and what the preference.
Horizontal
Horizontal,
every time.
yeah. It's hard because for social media, like for Instagram and stuff, we use vertical, but horizontal is what every publication I've ever worked for uses.
Good question, internet. All right, we have time for one more quick question, or we can get to the bar and networking, whatever you guys prefer. Bar, it's time for alcohol. Can we give the panelists a round of applause again?